Good morning, Jeremy. Guys, I want to introduce you to Jeremy. Jeremy is the director in the Microsoft Mixed Reality product group, where he serves as the commercial lead for Microsoft Mesh. But Jeremy, I was going through your backstory, man, and there was a whole list that I could list off here, and I could mention all these different titles, but I wanted you to tell me, because it's super impressive, and I want you to tell me a little bit about like who Jeremy is, how you came to Microsoft, and the journey.
Yeah, that sounds great. First of all, it's great to meet you. It's great to be here presenting to the whole crew. I'm so super happy that you reached out to me. So my background, first of all, as you mentioned, I'm the commercial lead for Microsoft Mesh. So I'm part of the core product group that's developing the mesh technology. I'm focused particularly on strategic partnerships, building out the ecosystem, all the things that are essential to making mesh a successful product without me necessarily actually building the product myself. And a big piece of that right now is reaching out to the community, grabbing a lot of learnings, reaching out to our customers and our partners, and making sure that what we're building is a real business productivity tool and not just sort of a flash in the pan, fun metaverse fad kind of thing. So you're going to see a lot of that coming in the near future. If you look at my background, I have a big mix of business meets technology. My background in undergrad and master's was electrical and computer engineering from Cornell University. I spent almost 10 years working in semiconductors at advanced micro devices, designing computer chips, finding ways to improve low power optimization, because when you go back to the early 2000s, power wasn't the top concern, and all-day battery life was non-heard of for a laptop device. And so a lot of research on the technology. I see in the chat, go red. Thank you.
Yeah, Justine is Cornell as well. Apparently, I didn't know that.
That's awesome. But yeah, my true passion throughout all of this, though, was human-machine interface, user interface design. And I found myself flocking to redesigning our design tools and how we redesigned our computer chips, going from manual text entry to much more graphical, much more natural ways of interacting. And throughout my career, that's been kind of the common theme, is understanding how do people interact with the world around them. Computers have been notoriously bad at that. You don't interact, you interface with them. And as we start moving to this digital world of mixed reality, of the metaverse, you're starting to interact with things the way you would real objects in the real world. And so that's kind of what guided my career as I worked in areas like manufacturing at Flextronics and started building out a virtual reality and augmented reality business unit there. And ultimately, that's what led me to Microsoft. Was I was looking for a way where we could have the impact on the industry, ensure that mixed reality took off at a company that had the financial backing to make it happen, had the desire to bring it to market, but wanted to do so for the right reasons. Ethical reasons being a very big, important conversation we need to be having as we build out this mixed reality future. So I've covered quite a bit throughout my career, and just love what we're doing at Microsoft and mixed reality, but also just enjoying what the community is doing and how we're coming together to basically define what this future is going to look like.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Before we get going, I do want to put one quick disclaimer that while I'm here and I'm at Microsoft, any thoughts and opinions I express are my own. Just make sure we have that clear out here. But yeah, carry on.
Sure. I understand. Where are you calling in from today, Jeremy, by the way? I forgot to.
Yeah, I'm at the mothership for Microsoft. So I'm out in the Redmond area. I live in Kirkland. And it'll tie into the conversation, but I've been a remote worker, even though I'm in the same city. I've been a remote worker for the past 3+ years.
Yeah, that's exactly why I asked as well. I was wondering, like, given the mesh context and the background, it would be fun to hear where you're calling in from, to see if you guys are actually putting your product into practice on a daily basis, and it seems so. But for the people watching, like, maybe there are some people out there that aren't super familiar with Mesh, with Microsoft Mesh, and how Mesh works on Teams, for example. So maybe you can give them a little run through quickly for those that aren't really up to speed yet.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been building Mesh as a platform to enable enterprise communications in ways that you've never been able to do before. So if you think about what's happened, the pandemic was kind of a catalyst for this. All of a sudden, the world found themselves remote. You can't come into the office, you can't see people face to face. And so you're faced with this challenge. How do I do my work? How do I do my job? How do I establish that connection with my coworkers, right? When you go into the office, it's not just about doing work. There's a huge amount that comes from presence, from being in the same room with people and being able to collaborate and innovate together. And so we set out to build a product. It actually started, earlier with AltSpace. A lot of people reached out to us and said, "How can we use AltSpace?" Which, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a consumer metaverse platform. It was one of the sort of OG products, and Microsoft had acquired them some number of years ago. And they didn't care at that time that it wasn't an enterprise product. They wanted a way to come together, be able to put on a VR headset, and feel like you can make eye contact with the person in front of you. And so that's what we set out to do with Mesh, was to be able to have that sense of presence, but in a safe enterprise collaborative way, something that meets compliance standards, where you can have sensitive work information and still be able to come together. So Mesh is a platform that's been built up. And another important thing that we realized is, while we're building it for VR devices, we'll see if the camera lets that go through.
Yeah.
The market, and if you're listening to the last conversation, we're still in very early days of the hardware market. And so what we did is we built this platform to work really well on your desktop, on the devices that you already have today, on your laptop, having parts that can extend to mobile devices, because that's where people are. And we'll probably talk about the cultural transition.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
We embedded it into Teams because that's where people are already working today. And so it's the most simple, natural transition to go from this Hollywood Squares grid of 2D videos to 3D immersive experiences.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, we'll get, like you said, we'll get to more of that, right? Like as we go into this session and we talk about these things. But again, for the people that have a hard time making it tangible, why don't we show like the quick video, like 60-second video of how it works, what it is, and it allows them to visualize it, right? So let's.
That sounds great.
I think the audio for us will cut off, but that's okay, right? Let's do this. All right. Well, that was, just to be clear, guys, this is not like me running a commercial for Microsoft. It's just to help everyone visualize it, because it helps. Because like, hey, what is this? Why do we need it? Why do I need to have a 3D version of my Teams? Blah, blah, blah. We'll get to that, right? Anyway, Jeremy, considering your background, your expertise, your current job, what's your perspective on some of the key factors that are driving brands to integrate virtual environments, in virtual worlds in their daily operations, whether it's in the business or even a marketing side? Obviously, I don't know if you're on a marketing side as much, but in the day-to-day operations of your business.
Yeah, so it's interesting. There's a whole myriad of reasons people are flocking to this. The first start of it, I mentioned a little bit earlier, but from Microsoft, we build worker productivity solutions. Like, we're helping to define the modern workplace. And so we do what we call the Work Trends Index study every year, where we survey thousands of people all across the world to understand the trends they're facing. When you look at management challenges, connecting people has been one of the biggest challenges in the hybrid environment, which, by the way, it's not a new challenge. This has been a problem when you have globally distributed workforces. Like, many of the companies we work with now have offices all over a country or all over the world. And flying people back and forth is super expensive. Everybody has been budget conscious, especially with the downturn in the economy as such. And so there's a bunch of challenges in just building those connections, which helps improve worker productivity. But we also have customers that are looking for ways to enhance learning, One perfect example is going into an immersive space where you have equipment that you want to train on, learn on, medical devices, manufacturing devices, right? So, think a large plastic injection molding machine that costs millions of dollars to buy and build. How do you train workers on it? Well, you can fly them into a factory, wait until there's downtime when the device isn't being operated, and try to learn how to use that device. Or you can drop them into an experiential world where they actually feel like they're standing there looking at a device. And they can actually start to learn and play with it. But not only that, you can now put digital instructions to help guide the person right where they are. You can highlight the right buttons to press. And we focus on collaboration. So you can have an expert who may be one of the best experts in the world, but they're based in Hungary, and you're in California trying to learn manufacturing. They can be right there next to you, and you're talking to each other. They can be pointing out different parts of the equipment. And so there's a lot of benefits of being able to feel like you're together no matter where you are in the world. We're seeing use cases, though, human resources, HR onboarding. I'll talk about Accenture, who's been a fantastic partner of ours for years now. They have run something like 300,000 new employees through metaverse experiences with Microsoft in order to train the new employees, but to help them foster relationships and build an attachment to their brand. Again, that's something that's really hard to do when you're just on a Zoom or a Teams call. But when you go into the space, you may have seen in that video, there was this giant Accenture world with a waterfall in the middle of it and lots of hands-on training that take boring things like codes of business ethics and bring it to life with fun analogies. And they do it in a way that it sticks, right? You have the spatial experience. You remember being there while you were learning about this, and that kind of sticks with you.
You experience the brand. You're not studying it. You're not reading it.
That's
you're
right.
living it. You're not just, consuming it. So I love that. And that's one of the use cases that I really like. It's to see the onboarding. It's the digital twin story, like all that stuff improves productivity, improves efficiency and all of that. So I'm really, really intrigued by all of it. And I'm really excited to see the future, implications there as well. But before that, before we go any further on the use cases, obviously these kind of technologies are kind of they come as natural. They come as second nature to younger audiences, younger demographics. So these virtual natives, people, let's say 26 and under, the future consumer, the future worker, is it important for a company like Microsoft to cater to them, quote unquote, to make sure to integrate certain strategies to make sure it's appealing to them as well? Because I can imagine someone that's born into this world, that they expect certain experiences. They expect certain experiences that are built on these technologies. So how do you see all of that?
Yeah, it's funny. Let's go back to the pandemic again. For a lot of us in the sort of older generations, it was tough. Like, we missed having our friends around and being in person. When you look at a lot of the kids, they didn't miss a beat. They came home, from the couch, popped on their headset, turned on Xbox Live or turned on their PlayStations, and they hung out with their friends the same way they did every other day. And so they were able to kind of weather this out. And, to your point, they are expecting this kind of environment to spill over into the workplace. We've actually done surveys on this, and it's like something like 50% of the workforce is already expecting to show up as an avatar in the workplace, in the next year. And a lot of them are super willing to come into these immersive experiences. But I wouldn't say we're building it to sort of placate them or cater to them. We're building it because we believe the collaboration experience cannot be limited to this, right? 2 video screens where I can't even make eye contact with you. And so if there were multiple people, I might be trying to look at the person over here, but to you, it looks like I'm staring off into space.
Right.
We believe that this is a fundamental way we're enhancing communication. That said, there's a bunch of our customers who have been using this, especially in the early days, as a way to attract talent to unusual jobs that might otherwise seem boring. So we've had government agencies reach out, banks and financial services, and they're trying to kind of get an edge on hiring a lot of the hot new talent, super well-educated people that are, concerned about going into a kind of a dull industry. If you look, again, I'll go to the Accenture example. If you look at the responses people post up on social media after they do an event, they're like, oh my God, my first day on the job was amazing. We were in the metaverse and this is the coolest thing. I can't wait to work for this company.
Yeah, well, it's super interesting. It's super interesting you mentioned that, because we've built, like, as Yondr, we've built experiences like that, right? And then you mentioned the onboarding. For example, we did a virtual world where we, for the merger of two telco companies, we created this experience for all these new employees to experience the brand, the values, the ethics, blah, blah, blah. And it was, it was a great success from that perspective to make these people, these new employees of this new company, feel them, to make them feel more connected, if you will. So yeah, we definitely share that vision, I guess. But something else I wanted to ask you, Jeremy, in terms of, how Mark Zuckerberg has been for the longest time, and in the previous session they talked about this as well. For the longest time, he was kind of dismissed as a bit of a dreamer, especially by all the pundits and whatnot, But now we're seeing someone like Microsoft step into the game. Well, not step into the game, but they are embracing and even partnering with Meta. So is it safe to say, or is it okay for me to say that there is a shared vision there for the metaverse and virtual environments? And what's the reasoning behind that decision, you think, from a Microsoft perspective?
Yeah. So, I mean, for starters, I will agree with some of the commentary that Mark Zuckerberg is very much a visionary in this space. And he staked his career and his reputation on it. But he had something that was unique that most people don't have, which is the cash reserves to be able to go do this kind of investment. So if you look at a lot of what's happened in the industry, there's been a ton of interest. This is not a new thing. It's been going back decades. First, it was research labs at universities and governments, and then it slowly started to make its way out into enterprises and companies and brands. But this is on that cutting edge of science meets engineering, right? Where engineering is building the thing and solving novel problems. Science is understanding how do you get the physical electrons to go through and become, things you can see right in front of you and interact with them. And so this is very new technology. We're at the beginning of a very rapid development cycle, but this is still going to be a long, 5-10 year journey, at least, before this starts to become something people use every day. And when you look at a lot of the companies that have been pioneers in this space, they've fallen off. Magic Leap had this amazing vision for building the AR glasses. They raised hundreds of millions of dollars, which was unprecedented, and then they suffered a near collapse. You have companies like ODG and Dacry and a whole bunch of other companies focusing on the head-mounted displays and the software, and they've run out of funding to do so. So they have the right vision. They just didn't have the patience to execute it or the financial backing. Because it's a business. So when you look at companies like Microsoft and Meta, we are fortunate enough to be market leading companies that have a lot of reserves. In the case of Zuckerberg, he has the board shares to be able to override some of the short-term thinking that is typical in business and really be able to invest in this for the long term. And I think that's where we see the vision for this. It's the companies that are trying to build out a long-term vision and were willing to ride over the ups and the downs. And when they changed their name to Meta from from Facebook, huge celebration. The world was super excited. And then in the last year or two, metaverse has almost become a 4-letter word. And all of a sudden, Zuckerberg is being thrashed as erratic or crazy and not listening to smart business sense. But in reality, he's that sort of humanitarian investor that's interested in building this technology for all of humanity. And so that's where we're coming together is, eventually this will be competition. If you think about, Apple versus Android or, Windows versus Mac, there's a ton of potential competition there. Right now, we're not there. We're at this co-opetition phase where it's more important for us to be tag teaming, investing where it's not just our dollars, but it's how do we build the best of all worlds and come together to establish the industry, establish these capabilities, get people out there using it and understanding the value. And once that starts to ramp up, once we start to cross the chasm, I'm sure there'll be competitive forces and dynamics that really take over.
Yeah. But I love it. I love how you put that with we're not competing yet, we're kind of cooperating in a sense right now, driven by that shared vision of the future. Are you, like, for Microsoft Mesh, are you guys currently seeing a lot of traction? I would say yes. but what are some of like the most common obstacles, or why are corporations or businesses hesitant?
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's been a really wild couple of years. When you go back 2 years, it felt like the dot-com boom all over again, where every company came in and said, we have to have this. We want to be a part of the metaverse. We don't know what it is, but we know our company needs it, and we don't want to miss the beat. So there's been a ton of excitement, but then macro trends have changed quite a bit. Metaverse has kind of fallen off, the hype has died down, and AI has risen up as the new hot topic for the days. And so whereas all the kind of R&D dollars were going to metaverse in the past year with the freneticism that comes with it, that has now shifted to the excitement and buzz around AI. And so just from a high level, macroeconomic, actually spending dollars in general have come down over the past couple of years. It shifted away some of that direct investment by customers to want to make this happen. So what we're finding is the companies that are coming to us now are the ones that have serious use cases, business opportunities they're trying to solve for, real business challenges they want fixed. So they're coming to us in a much more grounded way. And so we're not seeing this crazy, spike adoption. We're seeing the kind of gradual ramp up you expect as the technology comes in and starts adding value and people start to recognize what it can do for them.
Yeah.
There are a ton of obstacles to getting this adopted. I mentioned we're kind of on the edge of science and engineering. We're also at that bleeding edge of, proving out return on investment for companies so that there's actual real value here. And then there's a lot of technologies that haven't made it yet. So, again, I'll pull up, this is the MetaQuest Pro. There's no device management for these things, or it's just starting to take off. So if you're an enterprise and you have a secure network, you can't even get a mixed reality device to show up on your network without getting massive security exceptions. And so Meta has to work to enable third-party device management. Microsoft, other companies, VMware, we have to enable our devices and then build software that can support that. And so just getting devices in is challenging. Then you have the costs. AVP is a $3,500, $4,000 device. The Quest Pro, when it came out, was $1,500. The HoloLens at Microsoft, again, multi-thousands of dollars for these devices. And we haven't yet proven the business value of where that goes. And so companies are having to kind of take a leap of faith in investing in that. Then you've got other parts which are more, sorry.
No, go ahead, yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say the other big challenge we face is cultural adoption. This is new technology. So while you have a lot of the younger generation that are willing to do this, a lot of the executives, they've never spent time in a VR headset or an augmented reality headset. They don't understand the metaverse technology and what it can do.
They have no
trying to get teams to adopt this and test it and find the value, it's scary and change is hard. And so one of the big challenges we're facing is not just building the technology, but finding the right people to help teach, to help do the right deployment so that when a customer has their first experience in the metaverse or in an immersive experience, it's a good one. They have a positive experience and they want to do more of that. So change management, digital transformation, these are a lot of the buzzwords you'll hear, but they're very important to being able to drive adoption.
Right, that's understood. Because this kind of adds on to that, because VR obviously and mixed reality has a ways to go, but it makes sense then why you guys are doing the onboarding currently for Mesh mainly through PC, right? But is it coming? Do you guys foresee it coming to all the other headsets as well, or in let's say 5 years down the road, and then the price is democratized a little bit? Do you see it as being more, what do you call it, interoperable with these other headsets from these other companies as well, or how do you foresee that?
Yeah, absolutely. So from a Microsoft perspective, although a lot of other companies are facing this as well, but we're a platform company, right? Everything we build, by definition, runs across multiple platforms. You can use you can use Microsoft software, M365, Word, Excel, PowerPoint on a Mac computer, on an Android device, right? We are building platforms that sort of enable all users to be powerful. And so we're taking the same approach in how we build out Mesh and immersive experiences. We'll build first-party experiences on individual devices as a starting point so we can showcase it. But our long-term goal is to enable everybody in the market to have these amazing experiences. And you've seen that with our partnership with Meta,
Right.
already having brought teams and other things and establishing a deep connection with them to bring our software to their platforms. We also announced for Apple Vision Pro, we've already pulled teams over there, so people are already able to use it for their business meetings. And we announced we'll be bringing Mesh to the Apple Vision Pro as well.
Oh,
And so,
I didn't know that.
yeah,
Okay. That's you guys communicated that as well?
yes, yeah,
All
that has
right.
been out there. We made a public announcement probably about a month ago now, right after the EVP launch. And so, yeah, it is definitely a plan to expand to other platforms. And then there's lots of other devices. Lenovo has their VRX, HTC has their Vive Elite XR. Then you've got the new devices that, LG announced their partnership, Google, so on and so forth. There are a lot of people investing in this space and bringing HMDs to market. So, we will support this over time, especially as demand picks up. There's very much a chicken and egg problem, which is, do you build software for devices that aren't there yet in order to drive the demand, or do you wait until there's demand there to then support the platforms that have the most early adoption? Well, right now, there's not a lot of early adoption because we're still so early in the industry. And so there almost need to be some proactive bets in supporting a lot of the players in the industry. To your point about the cost coming down, that's where this is ultimately we expect to happen. VR in the enterprise, AR in the enterprise will start to become much more common. The form factor is going to go from these giant clunky things that people don't want to wear on their head to, this level form factor, under 100 grams, thin and light, easy to maneuver. But there's a big transition that has to happen before we get there. So the users today that are going to use a VR headset, they're the super early adopters, the geeks like me that love to play with the latest tech and start to see, wow, this is amazing. Most other people, they're going to have their first experiences on the desktop, and that's totally cool. You can still have amazing immersive experiences in 2D, and we've seen that from the gaming community, right? People get involved, you pull up your mouse, your keyboard, you navigate with the WASD keys, and you can roam through environments and feel like you're really there. Right. And over time, the early users of the headsets, they're going to start to say, hey, here's a portable device, check this out, see how immersive this is and see how much better it is. And little by little, that'll start to build up the demand. And we expect there will be a big shift over time from desktop only to desktop plus VR or mixed reality. And then, I'm thinking back to a question from the last session, but it's not going to be a winner take all or nothing thing. So the way we're building these experiences are, if you want to come in on a headset, great, come in, have that immersive experience. If you want to be on your desktop and have that amazing 3D experience, you can do that as well. And if you're not ready to jump into mixed reality experiences and immersive experiences, you can just dial in from your computer and use video chat the way you do today, or dial in on your phone. And so we're thinking about, mixed reality and immersive spaces as another mode of how you can communicate with people, not a let's shift everything from one point to another. I don't know if that kind of makes sense to you.
No, of course. It's similar to it's just a shift in the way we create and consume content, right? And it's not an exclusively this format or that format kind of story. It's there's going to be this and there's going to be that. So yeah, I agree with that. In terms of Jeremy, in terms of the comparison with Apple personas in spatial computing, it seems like they're more focused on communication with like 3D overlays in a mixed reality setting rather than than diving into virtual environments and virtual worlds. So I feel like Microsoft already did that with the HoloLens. Is that right, or am I completely mistaken there?
Yeah, no, you got that right. So we started, most of the mixed reality work we did came with the HoloLens, which was purely an augmented reality display, or mixed reality where you have persistent objects in your space. What we found, though, again, in the early phases of the hardware, it's still relatively big and clunky and expensive. And so in order to make that work, you needed to find business use cases with real return on investment. And most of that comes for frontline workers. So think about somebody working in a factory on an oil rig, somebody where they're in their hands, they need a remote expert over their shoulder. Being able to overlay those objects into the real world is super mission critical. And you can show how much more efficient you can build a Boeing jet engine when you've got this on your head than when you have to walk away from what you're doing, open up a 1,000-page manual flip through and try to find the instructions on how to do something. And so that's where it started. And when we started building Mesh, we actually started building it for the HoloLens. There was a Mesh demo app that was out there, and it was great. I could put a table in my office and invite my coworkers in, and their avatars would be around the table with me, and they were right there in my office. But what we found is, again, the HoloLens type use cases were great for frontline workers, but there wasn't an immediate need for it for information workers, for knowledge workers. Virtual reality, especially when people were working at home, it's a lot easier to convince someone to put on a device that blocks out the world when you're at home in your own office, in your own secure space, versus, being out in the middle of an office with something, covering you over and you can't see the outside world. Right. So in the short term, it's kind of shifted to these immersive worlds and immersive spaces for us. But as with everything, it's a spectrum. Right? So we may start with completely immersive spaces, and over time, the devices that do VR will also do AR and mixed reality. And it's just going to be a spectrum. And that's why what Apple did is great with the little dial that shifts between immersive and non-immersive. That's the way it's going to work. For the right applications, you'll enable the right setting. And, an example is, let's say you're collaborating on the design of a new car. You always see like an F1 racer with people walking around. Well, maybe that makes more sense to actually drop it into an office space with your coworkers, and you can walk around and take a look at it. Again, these things, they will adapt to the use cases that you need. Another piece when you look at the Apple side is like avatar fidelity. That's another question.
I was going to get into that. Yeah, right. Good point.
It's the same thing where there's a spectrum. There's a lot of different ways you can represent yourself. And so Apple's tried to go the way of doing these, high fidelity. You build a model of a person and it looks, really close to them. But it also very quickly hits on that uncanny valley where you're like, okay, it kind of looks like that person, but it's a little creepy.
Yeah,
it's a bad solution. It's a great solution. So as we built our technology, and this goes back to AltSpace as well, we've enabled everything from cartoony, avatars that are great because they work on low performance devices. There's not a lot that it takes to render them. And so you can get a lot more users into it, all the way up to we've done volumetric capture, holoportation. In those cases, you actually can go, as far as having a room full of cameras and sensors. So, picture like in the Matrix, where you've got 106 cameras rotating around you on a green screen, and you can actually take a hologram of a person, of a band, of an experience, and actually drop that into a mixed reality workspace. And so we've done everything across that range. And what we found is there are times when you want more and more sensors on you and times when you don't. So if you look at avatars in Teams right now, it's the simplest feature we've enabled. You turn your avatar on and your camera goes off. And so when you have video fatigue throughout the day, you can still participate in a meeting, show up with presence, interact, and have reactions. But you can deal with the fact that you've just woken up, or you came back from the gym, or you're just not feeling put together 100%, and you can use that avatar. And it's great. It reacts to your voice. There's a catalog of buttons and reactions you can press and show up the way you do, your thumbs up or your heart. The next level is to be able to do that same thing, but with your camera on. And now you still have the avatar. So if you're having a bad hair day or your room is a mess, you can still have the avatar react, but now it can match your facial expressions and your hand gestures. Then you take it to the next level and, keep going up and down that spectrum. Eventually you have webcam, where I can now take my full likeness, not something that's kind of similar as a model, but it can actually be looking at me now and then using AI to kind of like hallucinate the side of me. But for a meeting like this, you don't need full 360 degrees, but having a 180-degree view might really help us feel like we're together. Take that to the extreme, it's that full 360-degree scans. So it's all a matter of what's your use case? How many sensors do you want to have on you for that particular moment? How much do you want to spend, and do you have the right equipment available to you?
I get the whole topic of the avatar and the fidelity is super interesting to me, because we at Yondr, we often talk with clients and different brands that have this concern, like, oh yeah, I don't want to look all cartoony, and it's kind of weird because we're in a corporate setting. And so it's super interesting that you gave us more context and a little more insight there. So thanks for that. I think we got one more. Hold on. Maybe I should ask for, do we have any questions? Do we have any questions here? Hold on, Jeremy. Let me see. Based on the description.
Actually, while you're reading the questions, just one other commentary on the avatars, which is interesting, is a lot of people get very concerned on what does the avatar look like? How high fidelity is it? Does it represent me? Is it old enough? What we found is, in a lot of cases, when you go into a meeting, that matters for the first 30 seconds. And once you're in the meeting and you're collaborating with people, it's less about how you're representing yourself and more about that feeling that you're together and you're focused on a job. Kind of like, with clothing, right? Most of the time when you're working with somebody, you're not focusing on what they're wearing or how they're dressed. You're focusing on what are we trying to do together?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I didn't see any questions come in really. There's more comments and statements. But let's see, maybe I'll bring on Peter just for a second. And then if there's nothing else that we need, we can just wrap up because we've gone hard, man. This was really fun already. Let's see if Peter has anything else.
Hi, Jeremy. Very interesting. I think it was a very interesting session, and you're a very good talker, speaker. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, you're very enthusiastic. Yeah. So, are there any questions for Jeremy? I think it was a very, very valuable interview. This one. Yeah, thanks for sharing the vision of Microsoft with us. I think it's very.
Yeah. This is a really exciting space and an exciting time to be here. It's the beginning of like I said, a very long journey. And so we're excited to see every year we get more and more interest in different, varied interests, and the products are getting better and better. So, whether it's Microsoft or other companies' products, the whole ecosystem is coming together. Whoa, what is happening here?
Yeah, I don't know. Someone's getting real keyboard happy. Rickard is saying, what's Jeremy's take on WebXR?
Yeah, so that's actually an interesting question. WebXR is going to be super valuable for a bunch of reasons. One of the biggest is the ease at which you can get people into an experience. So one of the challenges we're facing in deployment right now is just getting people to download software, getting people to set up on their work tenants. How do you enable these systems versus when you can just pop into a web browser and have this immediate, beautiful immersive experience? That's going to be a great way to get people, especially in the early days when you don't yet know the value. It's a great way to start getting people into these experiences. It's also a great way for brands to connect with their consumers. I think you're going to start to see more and more of you're navigating a website and all of a sudden it drops you into an immersive experience. Well, over time, it may even evolve more to as you're browsing through an immersive experience. And then you say, oh, here's a General Motors, thing or a Coca-Cola thing. And then you jump into their immersive experience from within there. And so I think you're going to see more and more of these immersive experiences popping up. And WebXR, while there's some performance limitations of it, it's a fantastic way of getting people quickly into experiences. And again, right now for the ecosystem, it's important to get people trying these experiences out and starting to become familiar with it. I don't know if that answers your question.
Definitely.
Yeah, I hope so. Maybe a question from my end that, we've been experimenting the past year a lot with AI virtual assistants, and I think it was your co-founder Bill Gates last year said that he believes that in 5 years everyone will have an AI virtual assistant, maybe humanized or maybe not, just audio. Is it already possible to integrate like virtual like digital humans connected to large language model trained on a certain topic to add to your virtual world, to have it, to experience it less like the ghost towns that we have these days? Because if there is, that's the problem that you often have if you go into a virtual world and you're alone. It feels very lonely, of course. But if there are, definitely in terms of onboarding or training, it could be interesting, to have avatars trained when you have a conversation with.
I mean, there's a ton of powerful use cases that can come up when you start integrating AI chatbots with the company and the ability to interact dynamically in an immersive space. Imagine, you're an employee assistance program. And so you're, for employees for healthcare, for mental health. And you as a person are saying, hey, I'm not feeling so great today. I'm a little sad and I don't know why. Now you'd have the ability to walk up to one of these, AI chatbots and say, hey, I'm a little bit down. Maybe the chatbot runs an AI assessment tool to figure out, are you depressed? Are you anxious? And then it's like, well, great. Okay, so you're depressed. What can I do about it? What are my next steps? Well, now these chatbots, or the AIs rather, can then go off and explore not just public domain information about depression, but it can actually look up, what's your healthcare plan? What doctors are supported by your company? What are the healthcare resources that your company makes available to you? And it can give you a customized response. And maybe you're doing all of that while you're in an environment that's a peaceful place that you go to learn about company benefits, but also maybe it's a yoga retreat or a place to just come and feel zen. Maybe Headspace or Trip or something is integrated into it. And so it's that kind of safe place that you go. And the chatbot just becomes that valuable assistant for you. And that's just one example of, dozens that we're hearing all the time. When you look
How
at something—
far is that away, Jeremy? How far is that away, that example? Because it sounds amazing.
I want my Microsoft Jarvis. I want my Jarvis.
Yeah. Is it already possible?
Yeah, so all these capabilities, one of the cool things about Mesh is there's a scripting language behind it. So you have Unity to build the interactions, but then you've got a whole set of cloud scripting that you can do. And with that, you can call any API you want. And so it's a matter of, right now it's a manual process. You'd have to kind of do that integration, figure out the right APIs you want to call, pull up the right GPT in the background. And then, over time, we're exploring, how do we integrate that better? Do we have it automate avatars so the avatars are just responsive? How do you get the avatars to indicate that they're listening to you? So you can actually tell, like with a person, I look at you, you can tell that I'm listening. There's a lot of affordances that need to happen with these avatars so people actually feel like they're interacting with a real person. But yeah, the core capabilities, they're all here. Now we're kind of getting, this is where on the science versus engineering, now we need people to go build these experiences. And, one of the reasons we've been working, with Yondr is like, it'll be really exciting to see some of the experiences and integrations you can do. And the more you do that, the more you're going to see, brands and companies coming to you saying, hey, that was great. Can you do that for us?
Yeah, I think you probably inspired some people in the audience with the example that you just gave, because that's what it's all about, in my opinion. It's a very good use case. So
yeah,
I think
AI and
one more
metaverse
question.
come together.
Oh, yeah, sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say AI and immersive experiences, metaverse, however you want to call it, they're going to be sort of two sides of the same coin. They're complementary technologies where the immersive experiences, it's the canvas. It's the UI layer for how people can interact with this digital world and pull people together and collaborate. But what do you do in that space? How do you build that space? What does it look like? AI is going to help so much, whether it's like generate an environment that takes my marketing brand board and brings it to life as an experiential place, or it's, build my AI chatbot, or it's, hey, I want a Louis Vuitton handbag. Can you generate that for my avatar? AI and metaverse, AI is going to be the content engine. Metaverse is going to be that visualization layer.
Yeah, I think what you just explained touches a little bit on Henry's question. Any advice for graphic designers that would like to design spaces in Mesh?
Yeah, learn Unity. Unity is the back end that powers a lot of what we do. It's one of the most common design skill sets or design languages that we see people using across the industry. And whether that's Mesh, or it's, a custom platform built by Ernst & Young, or, you pick your favorite company. Unity tends to be one of the largest backend platforms. And if you can learn the design skills to do that, that's great. The other thing is focus not just on what are the things you're designing, but understanding humans, psychology, human behavior. Understand what people are trying to do, because it's very easy to go nuts with technology and say, I can do these amazing things. But at the end of the day, we're trying to solve real business problems and real interaction challenges that people have. And so the more you can understand how people think and what their obstacles are, you can build the right things.
I think we have maybe time for one more question from Kuba. Hey, Kuba, how are you? Will Mesh allow complex gamification elements to offer something like Roblox for adult professional audience? We want to make practical but also fun experiences.
I love the way you put that, practical but fun. That's a big part of what these immersive experiences do. It can be a blast to come together in these things. But yeah, gamification is a popular request that we get. Again, with mesh scripting, with cloud scripting, you can build in any systems you want. So you could tap into something like a PlayFab, if you want to use Microsoft technology, but you can build up your own gamification systems too, however you want. Again, kind of like what I was just saying, and I think you hit that right, Peter, which is, again, we're building the platform to enable you to build whatever your mind can think of. And so you can build rich graphical experiences, or you can build really interesting workplace environments, connect into learning management systems for HR, build in gamification and tracking systems, and then incorporate that into the activities and the types of objects that you build in the world. It's kind of up to you to decide what you build and how it gets built.
Yeah,
Okay.
Love it. No, man, we've really appreciated and enjoyed all your insights from someone that's actually working on the product that we all love and we're very excited about. So thank you for that, Jeremy. I think I don't want to keep you longer because we've already gone over the time that we had allocated to this session. So thanks for doing this with us. I also want to thank everyone else that was here. Thank you guys for showing up and attending our first ever Creative Technologies Day. I hope it was enjoyable. I hope it was informative to you guys. I want to thank Maria, Tom, Oster, Justine, Lee, Kanan, and Jeremy, of course. Thanks to the team in the back end doing what's necessary to make this happen. And thank you guys again for attending. And with that said, that's it for me. Peter, anything to add?
Yes, I think the recordings will be available soon. Okay, bye, Jeremy. Recordings will be available soon. So I think this is it for now. I think the most important message is that keep in mind that technology is evolving very rapidly. It's going fast and faster and faster. Dare to experiment, dare to innovate, dare to try something new, because your brand and your business deserves it. So wishing you a good day, evening, wherever you are. Enjoy the rest of your day. And if you have any other questions, feel free to send them directly to me. Here's my email address, or Sasha at yondr.agency. So feel free to reach out directly to us if you have any more questions. And normally you will receive the recordings very soon. Have a good day, everybody. Rest of your day, everybody, wherever you are. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.